Hi everyone. I thought I'd do a little video, a little bit of a different video this time on the balance changes to the weapons that they've just released. The devs have just released. I'm kind of going to be coming at it from my thoughts, mostly from the assassin kind of light melee weapons, so the sword, shield, the spear, and the hatchet. But we will. Yeah, but I'm going to get into fire staff and bow a little bit too. But yeah, let me know what you think. Now, just remember, this is just my opinion, so I'm not saying anything I'm saying is true. This is just chewing the fat, guys. So let's just have a little bit of a chin wag and
Longer
see what we
duration.
think, yeah?
So barbed arrows is being reduced from 15% to 9% and then keeping its full value or its full duration. And then poison shot will be reduced from 10 seconds to 7 seconds. So just a couple ticks on that one.
Okay, so I'm going to come over some of the changes, specifically the changes that are going to benefit, like the assassin style playstyle, the melee playstyle, especially light melee, which is what I tend to play. But they do seem to be nerfing in the latest update, in the dev update, they seem to be giving the bow a little nerf to dots. The argument being that it already has high burst damage, and so they really want dot damage to be, so that kind of sustained damage to be more for the fire staff, and so they're going to keep that burst damage to the bow. Obviously, with the bow, that's very much going to be like, to be able to get that burst damage is very much tied to the ability of the player to aim the shot, right? Like, if it's me, I'm going to miss like 3 out of 4 shots, especially when I need them to land. So, like, it's not going to feel to me like the bow has high burst because of that, right? And whereas someone who can aim really well, like people who play FPS games, then they're obviously going to be like, they're going to be able to utilize that burst of the bow and make lots of kills. And I think this is when you see this big dichotomy. Like, bow seems to be that weapon where people are really divided. Like, some people are like, oh, people just don't know how overpowered it is, and other people are like, it's rubbish. I think a little bit of it comes down to, like, like, there are some people that can aim really well, and they're going to absolutely destroy. Well, they're going to do really well with the bow.
And we're totally like, all of these things are not just based on like our gut feeling. Like, we're using our data, our analytics to kind of like validate our assumptions, our hypotheses. In this case with the bow, what was the like indication in the data? I'm just curious, like, what did we see there?
We have a lot of our data. It breaks down the damage types, usage, and where the damage comes from. And bow had really high kind of burst damage from just the actual hits that they did. And then their sustained dots, especially with a lot of the other artifacts and perks that are coming out that increase the duration of these. And so the bow having both the kind of really high burst damage with just dot ticks that could just keep going. We're just kind of slightly reeling in the dot aspect of it, just because other weapons kind of handle that dot thing. Like a fire staff's a really dot heavy weapon, so don't want the bow to kind of be as powerful as the fire staff's dot aspect of it, while also having the burst damage it has.
When you compare the fire staff to the bow, it gets into a bit of muddy water, and I'm no kind of expert because my aim's a bit shoddy, but I think the problem is that your average mage user is gonna do better than your average bow user, simply because the mage actually has some decent burst, right? You can shoot a fireball into a pillar of fire, into a light attack, and they all land at the same time. So that is a lot of burst, and it's much easier to get off than if you're using a bow, where all your burst comes from, you still have to hit your opponent. So there's like maybe 2 or 3 shots that you need to land and aim and hit that opponent in order to get that burst. And so I think that sometimes gives the impression like more people die from mages because it's just easier to land those AoEs and compared to bows. But if you know how to use a bow and you can aim, then your burst is going to be much higher than that of a mage, if that makes any sense. That's kind of where I sit on it. I could be wrong. I feel like, yeah, bow is a harder weapon to learn. I think that I still think Mage is quite hard to learn too, I think, but it's just probably a little easier to pick up. And then, of course, as well, like you've got that massive sustain with all the dots, which they talk about. But one thing I will say that I'm interested in is where he talked about the data collection and the data analytics. So I'm a data scientist by trade, and so I think like there's a little bit of a lag between them getting their data and then trying to fix the weapon. So like they've obviously got the data for the bow because they have to let the game run a little bit, right, before they can get the data coming through to show, okay, like these are the things that are coming through. And I think that's right, that they don't want to jump the gun, I guess. And one thing I'm appreciating about these guys right now is they seem to not be trying to do like big drastic changes anymore. They're trying to like just dial just a little bit, as you could probably see with what they're doing with bow. So I kind of appreciate that. So they don't want to jump the gun. So they have to kind of wait for the data to come in, and then they have to think about like how they're going to implement the changes to adjust the weapon. And so it sort of feels a little bit right now like, okay, they're changing the bow, and they're not doing anything to the fire staff, which we'll get to shortly because it's kind of buff. But, you know, like you have to bear in mind that they've already probably got the data like a month ago or 2 months ago as like the bow being a little overpowered, and they're in the process of adjusting it now. They're probably still in the middle of collecting the data on the mage, which has been very strong kind of more recently than the bow. And then, you know, would be very surprised if they don't start dialing down the fire stuff in the near future. But I think you just have to realize like there is a little bit of a lag between data collection, the data analytics, and then obviously implementing changes to adjust the weapons. So I don't think it's like that they're just stupid where they're like, oh my god, you know, fire stuff is fine, let's nerf the bow. I think that it's just how they're collecting the data is kind of like creating a little bit of a lag. And then that's why we're seeing kind of the bow is in the middle of being adjusted right now, whereas the fire staff's still in that kind of data collection phase. And this is kind of backed up, or like a little bit of evidence for this comes from when they talk about the fire staff, because they nerfed the fire staff flare a long time ago when obviously it was doing a lot of damage with its little AoE, so they nerfed the damage that you did from it if you chose that trait. And it's only now that they're starting to kind of rebalance it, going, okay, we think we've adjusted it too far.
Okay. So what about the fire staff? Fire staff is actually one of my favorite weapons, and I use flare quite a bit. And I know we at one point reduced the damage of flare because we thought it was a little too oppressive, especially in like wars and like situations like that. But I guess we've made some changes there. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, just a slight bump to flare. Basically, it was really strong. We nerfed it, probably over-nerfed it a while back, because it was basically the flare trade-off would be, initially it was your heavy attacks do an AoE, but your damage got decreased, and so it went down to 110, and then we're now bumping that to 120. So just when we initially put flare in, it was just one of the highest or like most damage events style weapon in our data.
Now, they made those changes ages ago, so it just goes to show, like, the period it takes for them to, kind of get that data coming through, do kind of a little bit of analysis on it to show, like, okay, is this real? It does take a lot of time. I'm sure they've got to have a lot of data too, and so it should get easier now, considering they've only got, like, 500 players playing the game. But anyway, and so I think there's a little bit of a lag, and you can sort of see that by the fact that they're now working on Flare, which was done like, I don't know how, at a guess, like 2 months ago or a month ago. But either way, I'm sure that these changes to the fire staff being a little OP at the moment will be coming down the track, but we just have to wait a little bit.
So there was some changes to Keen Berserk, I see, on that.
Yeah, that one. So Berserk is just a really useful ability, and then we have some fixes coming in the future. Not sure exactly what release they'll be a part of, but we are fixing some issues with Berserk stuns and like hatchet aim throw aspects of it, where like the canceling got weird. But for Berserk, for it being such a useful kind of core foundation of the weapon, the perk usage was pretty non-existent, and most of that was due to the 50% health cutoff, because you don't want to like let yourself get too low health so that you can finally use a perk. So we removed the health condition on it, so it works at any point. And then we adjusted the values and lowered them a little bit, and then adjusted the functionality. So now it's just your overall crit chance and crit damage is going up when you're using Berserk if you have that perk. And then you don't have to worry about the health requirement, and the values are going to be a little bit more in control right now.
I mean, I was told that was a good trait even while it was, like apparently crap. Yeah, I was told like it's a must-have, you should get it. And I'm trying to think of if I did get it, but it's I did a video previously on it, and yeah, it hits like a truck. You just had to bait people in to attack you, but you have Defy Death, right? So what you would do is you would attack someone, and you kind of pop that Berserk when you're at kind of getting under 50% health, knowing that you actually have more health than it looks like because you have Defy Death. They'll kind of get baited in thinking they can kill you, but you're going to be hitting them really, really hard because you've just done the Keen Berserk and you've just popped Berserk. And so, you'd usually come out on top. Now, you're going to just not have to worry about even putting yourself into a dangerous situation. You can just pop that Berserk straight away, and you'll probably be able to outtrade anyone. But I feel like that's fine, because I feel like Hatchet, like, if anyone's tried to hit with a Hatchet, you really have to be quite close to the opponent. So I feel like... and I feel like playing a Hatchet as a player, especially now in the current OPR where everyone's ranged and everyone's zerging, man, you need to be really smart about when you're getting onto someone to attack them. So if you've reached the point where you've managed to get to a player amongst all the bows and the fire staffs, and you're close enough and you're starting to hit that Berserk to get them as like an assassin kind of playstyle, like you finally got to that gank, I think it's fair that you're going to fucking hit like a truck. You're in light armor, you take heaps of damage, you really have to plan like how you're going to get to the person. It's high risk because when you do get to the person, like you can just get blown up so easily. I think having a skill like Hype Berserk, which helps you play like an assassin, is only a good thing. So, thumbs up.
Rapier, the good weapon, really useful to use in many different situations, but one feedback we got looking through our Discord and just player feedback is weirdly one of the most kind of powerful abilities, but was one of the least used perks for it. It was a deadly flourish perk. Right now it just does a damage boost, which kind of a high percentage. It does like 40% damage. Functional usage of that is not that strong. So one thing we're adding to it is that part will still be there, but now it's going to also apply the Rapier Bleed.
I mean, that's nice. I don't use Riposte because I feel like it's people are too aware of it now. So when I'm using like my Spear Rapier build, I use that Flourish and Finish because it's a nice little lunge forward and it's a stagger. So I kind of use it often just to get away from people or to get them off guard. But if that's going to add like a bleed to them too, like, a little bit of extra damage doesn't hurt, does it? Seems like a nice change.
And what about the Spear? I see we got quite a few changes coming in for that as well.
Some people may be a little upset with this. They're going to be a decent amount of nerfs on this one. Hopefully not enough to make it feel miserable. I love the Spear. It's a fun weapon to use, but some of the kind of utility it had, because it had really high DPS and just a ton of utility. So one that we're going to change is for the Evasive Maneuvers passive. Right now that applies to all dodges for 2 seconds, and we're going to make it the next dodge with 2 seconds. I think that's still enough to make it feel useful, have some really good value, just not be like too strong. And then that combined with the Invigorating Crits passive, that right now is you just get flat stamina on a crit, which is incredibly powerful because it can apply to like Cyclone and just every other hit. So instead of it just giving you flat damage, it's going to give you increased stamina regen for a brief period of time whenever you get a crit. So hopefully enough to keep its value, kind of maintain its purpose, but not become that thing where you never have to worry about stamina. And then the Fortifying Perforate perk. Perforate does a lot. It's a good ability, it does have damage, and then it just applies so many status effects. So one we're going to initially look at is the Fortifying Perforate, just reducing its value, hopefully enough to make it useful, but not oppressive or not too powerful. That's kind of our main goal, is we want most things to have a purpose and have a value, but just not make it necessary.
So I can kind of live... I don't think just reducing the next dodge, that's not terrible, because I probably wouldn't want to dodge twice in 2 seconds. So I think that would probably affect me not that much. But it's still like a light nerf. The restoring 20 stamina on critical hits though seems pretty big, because stamina regen it's not gonna make a difference. I don't think that's gonna pretty much mean nothing. So you really, yeah, I can't imagine the regen being that high that if you're in the middle of a fight, like if you're an assassin. So the thing what I like about the spear and rapier, which I just talked about in my last video, is you're able to play a light assassin. Okay, because if you get hit, you pretty much die. Like, you die so easily as a light melee, you know? But yet you need to get into the crowd, the Zerg, to get your kill. But of course, so you're putting yourself in high danger. One fuck up and you're basically dead, you know? And what I liked about the spear and rapier is with these sorts of skills, like that extra stamina, is it allowed you to stay alive while trying to get that kill, you know? You don't have range, you can't just fire from 20 meters away, so, you know, and everyone's so much more Zergy now, and so it was kind of like that weapon combination where, you know, you could actually stay alive in a Zerg, you know, dodging, using your rapier skills to stay alive, so it made you like a really evasive, like a rogue. Obviously we don't have any weapons that give us stealth, so we have to look for weapons that do something similar. So what I'm worried about is that is going to impact on that playstyle quite a bit. The fortify and perforate doesn't bother me. It depends, like, you know, you're already light melee, so you already get hit pretty hard. I just don't think the fortify and perforate is, like, if it basically reduces the damage you take, unless I'm getting it wrong, but I don't think like a nerf to that's going to make too much of a difference. It's probably more impactful if you're like someone who's wearing a spear in heavy or medium armor, but in light armor, even though I am using featherweight, the amount of damage reduction I'm probably going to get from it is going to be like minimal. So I don't think that is a big deal. But the invigorated crits is kind of a stinky one, but we'll just have to test it out and see how it goes, and whether I really notice the difference in stamina. Because you've still got all those rapier skills you can rely on too, so I still think you'll be quite evasive.
Okay, cool. And so you talked a little bit about this for the bow, kind of like what we were seeing in the data. With the spear, I know I'm pretty sure it was at the top of the list in most modes, right, for like usage and like. So what was what was the findings there from the data that led us to these changes?
Yeah, kind of main ones are data focused. In most modes, the spear was kind of like either in the most used or most damage events triggered. Even weirdly, sometimes most damage done. And then that combined with just all these extra effects it had, which, granted, spear, I think its main purpose is DPS, so we don't want to just directly go after that.
I mean, I kind of wish they would actually go after the DPS as a PvPer. I feel like the spear is like so good that I could handle a bit of a DPS reduction. What I like about the spear is its ability to poke an opponent from the distance. And you couple that with the extra stamina that you get, you know, it's like a very quite an evasive weapon. You can kind of poke at someone and then dodge backwards and get away. So it allows you to be really, really evasive. Like, it's fair enough if the data's showing that everyone is using spear. Like, in terms of melee users, it's a top pick. So there's no doubt about it. But, you know, I would probably rather take the hit to the damage and keep the evasiveness. And, you know, obviously they can't change the range at which you can hit people, so you're always going to have that kind of be able to poke them from a distance, but that couples so well with the evasiveness of the spear that, you know, in essence, if they reduce the damage, it wouldn't matter too much, because it's just a matter of time before you kill them anyway. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, and if you have to reduce your constitution down really low in order to do a little bit more damage, well then, like, you're doing that glass cannon trade-off, right? Which is what I've been talking about. The whole point of the assassin is it's like, okay, I will like back the fact that I can stay alive and I'll dodge attacks and I'll be evasive, and I accept that if I stuff up, I'll probably die, but I'm gonna do good damage while I'm in there and I'm playing well, you know. By keeping the damage but reducing the evasiveness, I feel like that's more of a nerf to the spear. So yeah, it's a bit disappointing. I still think it'll be fine.
Just to the sword and shield, this one, these changes might be a little controversial because, as I'm sure everyone knows, the sword and shield is very strong and very well used. But we're actually suggesting some buffs here. Can you tell me about the reasoning there?
Yeah, so like you said, really controversial. Sword and shield is a very versatile weapon in terms of its functionality, but for the most part, if you're going to be playing a PvP mode with the weapon, you're going to just see 3 abilities used every single time. And so we want to kind of buff the other things to kind of give you a little bit more choices and kind of mix up what's being used. So Defender's Resolve is going to get a little bit of a buff. So we're improving the taunt that it has, kind of changing how quickly it activates. So the status effect that's applied when you activate Defender's Resolve is going to be activated a little bit sooner. The cooldown we're reducing a little bit, not too much, because that survivability you get from it's going to be strong, but trying to hope that we can kind of keep its value going and give it a little bit more purpose outside of the 3 abilities that most people use, which are the Shield Bash, Shield Rush, and Leaping Strike. We're also increase the final upgrade to Defender's Resolve. The healing there right now, it's max health, and we're going to change it to base health. So instead of it being 15% max, it'll be 30% base, and kind of open up the amount of equip loads and different builds that upgrade will be useful with. And then
the problem is, I feel like there's almost like 2 classes, with the sword and shield, like very 2 distinctive playstyles. You've got that heavy or medium armor, probably more heavy, where they're like tanky donnies. So where Defender's Resolve is like really important to them, and I can imagine like that's where the Whirling Blade will be good too, because like you're more of like a tank, more of like an AoE, so you want to be able to take a good hit. If you're playing a light armor assassin, you're really wanting to get in there, get the kill really quickly, and the way you get the kill really quickly is you use Leaping Strike, Shield Bash, and Shield Rush, so you kind of lock them CC chain in that CC chain, and then just like take their health down while you're doing that. I don't think you can probably give up on any of those things. So I just don't see the advantage of Defender's Resolve, to be honest. Plus, with the cooldown of 45 seconds, they just say you're going to reduce it a little bit. I mean, I can see the advantage a little bit. Like, if they're reducing... The other problem that I found with Defender's Resolve is that it takes so long for it to kick in. So it's like, usually if you've like, you're in PvP and you're like bashing your shield for ages, they can usually kill you in that because you've stopped being mobile. So any benefit you get from it doesn't really help that much, if you're in light armor, that is, because they'll just smash the crap out of you, because they'll catch up to you. But, as a heavy, obviously you can take the hit, so by the time you've hit the Defender's Resolve, you get the benefits from it. So if they're reducing the ability for it to kick in, and they're reducing the cooldown, I can maybe see the advantage of it where like maybe you'll come in to do a gank, you hit the Defender's Resolve, so then when you come in to do the gank for that period, that 8 seconds, you don't have as much damage that you're taking, and you're getting a free heal, and, so that allows you to kind of be that gank machine for that 8 seconds. But then you're giving up one of the key stun locks. Like, a Sword and Shield is kind of like that rogue play style in the MMOs, where they stun lock you to death, So, and you're giving one of those up. So, yeah. However, we can always rely on the good old Greatsword and Hatchet. Hatchet's getting a buff. Greatsword's already strong. They're like the 2 hardest hitting weapons, surely. Great assassin weapons. And in fact, my good friend El Mechanico managed to get 48 kills in an OPR the other day, which was pretty impressive. So, clearly, there's hope. Don't give up. We can just... revert to the basics of Greatsword and Hatchet and just ruffle stomp people. So we'll make it